Please, I'm begging you, don't do this. I'll do anything.
Husband froze in court when his barren ex-wife walked in heavily pregnant on their divorce day. He thought he had won. 5 years of marriage, no children, and he finally threw her out, calling her barren. But on the day he went to finalize their divorce, she walked into the courtroom, heavily pregnant, and his world shattered. Hello, friends. Welcome back. Before I proceed, please kindly hit the subscribe button, like and share this video to your loved ones. Thank you for your continuous support. Now let's dive right in. Ethan Caldwell and Claire had once been the picture of modern success. Their sleek townhouse in a Boston suburb gleamed with perfection, and their jobs, him in finance, her in marketing, kept them busy and admired. Yet the one thing they longed for, the thing that was supposed to complete their lives, never came. 5 years had passed, each one slipping by without the sound of children, and the silence in their home became heavier with every day. At first, Ethan reassured her, his words warm though tinged with doubt. It will happen when the time is right, Claire. Don't worry. She clung to that, attending appointments, enduring tests, and counting the weeks as she clung to hope. Every negative result, every passing month without news, was a blow she bore quietly. Ethan's family didn't help. Sunday dinners with his parents became a minefield of veiled insults and loaded questions. His mother would sigh, shake her head, and mutter under her breath, "A family isn't complete without children. Maybe you married the wrong woman, Ethan." His sisters whispered behind her back, giggling cruelly at each misstep she made. At first, Ethan defended her, brushing away their words. But with each passing year, his patience thinned, and frustration fermented into harshness. Arguments erupted over the smallest things. A misplaced document, a dinner gone cold, and always circled back to the same accusation. 5 years, Claire. 5 years of nothing. What good are you to me if you can't even give me a child? Claire's attempts to soothe him fell on deaf ears. She suggested adoption, explored new treatments, and even proposed counseling. But Ethan refused. He measured worth in children, in the continuation of his name, and her inability to conceive became the mirror reflecting his fears and insecurities. Evenings grew tense. The marital bed turned cold, silent, a battlefield of resentment. Ethan started staying out late, returning smelling of alcohol or faintly of perfume that wasn't hers. Confrontations erupted, each one leaving deeper scars. "Maybe if you were a real woman, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere," he spat one night, his anger raw, uncontrolled. One rainy October evening, the breaking point arrived. Thunder cracked across the city as rain lashed against the windows of their townhouse. Their arguments spiraled, fueled by years of resentment. Claire's eyes welled with tears as she pleaded with him. "Ethan, please don't do this. Don't throw away everything we've tried." But Ethan, his face flushed with anger, slammed his fist on the kitchen counter. "I've wasted enough time. Pack your things. Leave. You're barren, Claire. I can't waste another day with you." Tears streamed down her face as she gathered her few belongings. Each item felt heavier than the last. Every step toward the door a step into uncertainty. The rain poured down on her, soaking her hair and clothes, but it could not compare to the ache in her chest. The door slammed behind her with the finality of a gavel, leaving her alone in the storm. She walked through puddles, suitcase in hand, past neighbors who peeked from behind curtains but said nothing. Their silence mirrored the isolation she felt, stripped of the marriage she had cherished and the dream she had carried. Yet within her despair, a quiet determination began to take root. Ethan had pushed her out, labeling her as defective and barren, but Claire realized the story wasn't over. Somewhere beyond the pain, life awaited. New chapters, new possibilities, even love that she could not yet imagine. She had been cast aside, but she would not remain broken. The rain stung her face as she turned the corner, and though she couldn't see the path ahead clearly, she knew one truth: she would survive. Not because she had someone to hold on to, but because she had herself. Claire settled into a modest apartment in downtown Boston, its walls bare and floors worn, yet it was a space that belonged entirely to her. She painted one wall a soft sage green, hung string lights across the ceiling, and bought a small bookshelf to hold her favorite novels. Every object she placed was a quiet declaration. She was starting over, and this time, she would do it on her own terms. The first few weeks were lonely. Nights were the hardest, the silence pressing against her like a weight. She cooked for one, watched television shows she had ignored before, and went for long walks along the river, letting the city lights blur against her tears. But the solitude gradually transformed into something else. Clarity, focus, and a sense of control she hadn't felt in years. It was during one of these walks that she met Daniel Harper. He was unloading boxes at a community center, his broad frame bending easily under the weight. And his movements spoke of someone who cared more about others than himself. Their first conversation was casual, a shared comment about the weather, but something in his gentle tone stayed with her. Over the next few weeks, they kept running into each other. At the farmer's market, in the coffee shop, on evening strolls. Each encounter felt effortless, a soft rhythm she hadn't known she'd been missing. Daniel was nothing like Ethan. He asked questions, genuinely wanted to know the answer, and most importantly, he listened. Claire found herself sharing things she had locked away. Her heartbreak, the humiliation she endured, and her lingering fears. Daniel never judged. He only offered warmth and encouragement. "You're not broken, Claire. You never were," he said one evening as they watched the sun dip below the skyline. His words were simple, but they resonated, echoing through the hollow spaces she had carried for years. Their friendship deepened into something more. Daniel's steady presence became a sanctuary, his laughter a balm, and his quiet care a kind of protection Claire had never known she needed. He respected her pace, never pushing, only allowing love to grow organically, like the slow unfurling of spring blooms. As the months passed, Claire began to notice subtle changes in herself. She felt lighter, more confident, and unexpectedly, her body began signaling something she hadn't dared hope for. Morning sickness arrived subtly at first, nausea, fatigue, but then the unmistakable sign. A missed period, followed by the confirmation she had only dreamed about. She was pregnant. The moment she saw the 2 lines on the test, tears of disbelief and joy streamed down her face. She sank to the floor, laughing and crying at once, the weight of past years finally lifting, if only for a moment. Daniel found her there, crouched on the bathroom floor, her face a mixture of shock and elation. Without a word, he lifted her into his arms, pressing his forehead to hers. "We're going to be okay," he whispered. "This is your life, our life, and it's just beginning." Pregnancy became Claire's quiet triumph. Every flutter of movement, every change in her body, felt like proof that she had been misjudged, that her worth had never been tied to someone else's pride. For 5 years, Ethan had called her barren, but now she carried life, evidence that she had been unfairly blamed and cruelly dismissed. Daniel was unwavering. He attended every doctor's appointment, helped set up the nursery, and spoke to her belly with a tender certainty. Their evenings were spent planning for a future she hadn't thought possible. Names, stories, bedtime routines. Every decision felt shared, every worry eased by his reassuring presence. As her belly grew, so did her confidence. She laughed more freely, walked with a spring in her step, and finally began to see herself not as a woman discarded, but as a woman reborn. The pain of the past lingered only as a shadow, faint and distant, unable to diminish the life and love she now embraced fully. Meanwhile, Ethan remained unaware. He believed she was still alone, barren, and broken. He had filed for divorce 6 months after kicking her out, imagining the court process as a simple formality, expecting compliance and silence. But life, as it often does, had other plans, and Claire's entrance into that courtroom would shatter every assumption he had made. Ethan Caldwell filed the divorce papers 6 months after Claire had left. In his mind, it was a simple formality, the final step in closing the chapter on a marriage he considered a failure. He walked into the Boston courthouse on that March morning with a practiced confidence, wearing his usual tailored navy suit and polished leather shoes. Every movement suggested control, a man certain of his victory. He glanced around the courtroom with a sense of pride, assuming Claire would not appear, that she would cower under the weight of humiliation. He had convinced himself he was justified. 5 years of childless marriage, endless tests, and months of awkward dinners with his family had left him bitter. He remembered the pointed glances, the whispered comments. "Ethan, you married the wrong woman. She can't give you an heir." And with each passing year, those words had burrowed deeper, feeding the frustration and arrogance that now propelled him toward the courthouse doors. As he approached the clerk's desk, he signed in with a steady hand, scanning the room for familiar faces. There were a few spectators, others waiting for unrelated cases, but mostly, the courthouse seemed ordinary, as if nothing extraordinary could ever occur here. His lawyer leaned over, whispering reminders and last-minute advice, but Ethan hardly registered the words. His thoughts were fixed firmly on Claire, or rather, the absence he assumed she would maintain. "She won't show. She's too proud or too ashamed," he muttered under his breath, almost like a charm meant to reinforce his confidence. He settled into the petitioner's chair, glancing down at the documents. Each page confirmed what he believed. Claire had no claim, no leverage, and certainly no reason to be here. He imagined the gavel striking, the papers signed, and his freedom cemented. Judge Lawson entered the room, his robes rustling, commanding attention without needing to raise his voice. "We will hear the case of Caldwell versus Caldwell. Is the petitioner ready to proceed?" Ethan nodded, straightening his posture. He felt the familiar surge of pride, the anticipation of a courtroom victory. Everything had been lined up perfectly, or so he thought. He barely noticed the murmurs from the gallery, or the slight shift in energy as the courtroom waited. Then, the doors at the back opened, and the hush fell over the room like a wave. Ethan's casual confidence faltered. He looked up, expecting perhaps an empty hallway or a late clerk, and froze as Claire entered. She walked in with measured steps, calm, radiant, and visibly pregnant. The air seemed to shift. The sound of her heels clicking against the floor became a drumbeat of inevitability. Ethan's eyes widened, his hands trembling on the table, the pen slipping and rolling unnoticed to the floor. The murmurs escalated into whispers, and some witnesses exchanged shocked glances. Ethan's lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically, trying to regain control. But Ethan was immobilized, frozen in disbelief. Claire's presence was more than unexpected. It was a declaration. The very woman he had labeled barren and cast aside was standing before him, carrying life that he could no longer claim. The courtroom held its collective breath. Ethan's mind raced, grappling with impossible questions. Could this child be his? Had the last chance before she left somehow succeeded? Or had another man given her what he could not? The uncertainty gnawed at him, leaving him unsteady, vulnerable in a way he had never allowed himself to feel. Ethan glanced down at the documents, then back at Claire. He had imagined this courtroom as a stage for his triumph. Instead, it had become an arena of reckoning. Every word he had spoken, every insult he had hurled, every act of cruelty replayed in his mind as he realized the full weight of his misjudgment. He wanted to speak, to demand answers, to reclaim control, but no sound emerged. His world had tilted, leaving him suspended between hope, fear, and a devastating realization. Claire was no longer the woman he could dominate, dismiss, or control. She was something else entirely, resilient, radiant, and capable of life he could no longer dictate. The judge's gavel echoed through the room again, grounding everyone in the formalities of law. Yet Ethan's mind was far from legalities. It was trapped in shock, in disbelief, in the sharp pain of recognition. The wife he had discarded was standing before him, pregnant, victorious, and beyond his reach. The courtroom doors closed behind Claire with a sound that echoed like thunder in Ethan's ears. She walked in slowly, deliberately, her posture straight, her head held high. Her long, flowing coat barely concealed the roundness of her belly, but every step she took radiated confidence, a quiet triumph that stunned everyone present. Ethan's eyes widened, his hands gripping the edge of the table, as though it were a lifeline. For 5 years, he had believed she was barren, powerless, and broken. Now, that illusion shattered in a single heartbeat. A hush fell over the spectators. Some whispered to their neighbors. Others stared in disbelief. The receptionist's pen hovered midair. The court reporter paused mid-sentence. All attention centered on Claire as she moved toward the judge's bench. Each stride deliberate, graceful, and impossible to ignore. Ethan's chest tightened. His mind raced, cycling through memories of humiliation and rejection. He remembered the nights of bitter arguments, the dinners with his parents where her worth was questioned, the venomous accusations that had once seemed justified in his own mind. And now, here she was, stronger, radiant, pregnant, and entirely beyond his control. The judge tapped his gavel lightly, calling the room to order. Order in the court. Mrs. Caldwell, please take your seat. Claire moved with care, settling into her chair, one hand resting over her stomach protectively. Ethan couldn't move his eyes from her. Every motion, every breath she took, confirmed what he had refused to believe. She had life growing inside her, proof that he had been wrong all along. His lawyer leaned toward him, whispering frantically, "Sir, compose yourself. This is still about the divorce proceedings." But Ethan heard none of it. His thoughts were consumed by the impossible reality before him. Could this child be his? Or had Daniel Harper, the man he had never expected, become the father of the life she now carried? The uncertainty gnawed at him, making him feel smaller, weaker, and more exposed than he had ever felt in court or at home. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder, punctuated by gasps and whispered comments. People leaned forward in their seats, craning their necks to witness the unfolding drama. Ethan's mind raced for solutions, excuses, or explanations, but the truth was glaring and inescapable. Claire had moved on. She had thrived. She had life in her womb. Claire finally met his eyes. There was no pleading, no apology, only a quiet, undeniable strength. Her gaze pierced him, holding a story of betrayal, resilience, and victory. Ethan's knees weakened slightly. His hands, which had been gripping the table with tension, shook visibly. For the first time in years, he felt the full weight of the consequences of his arrogance. The judge attempted to refocus the courtroom. "We will proceed with today's hearing. Mr. Caldwell, you may present your case." Ethan's voice caught in his throat. Words that had been rehearsed, arguments prepared for months, fell away under the overwhelming presence of Claire. His lawyer gave him a sharp nudge, but he was frozen, unable to stand, unable to speak. Claire's calm composure contrasted brutally with Ethan's visible unraveling. She didn't flinch, didn't falter, and didn't offer him the reassurance he desperately sought. She was no longer the woman he could control or manipulate. She was beyond that, carrying both a child and an undeniable truth that he could no longer deny. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as the scene played out. Ethan's imagined triumph dissolved, replaced by a gnawing fear, regret, and the slow, dawning realization that the life he had tried to destroy had survived, and in some ways, thrived without him. Every eye in the courtroom followed her, drawn to her presence like moths to a flame. And for Ethan, every glance, every whispered comment, and every movement of her rounded belly was a reminder that he had misjudged her entirely. He had thrown away the one person he should have cherished, and now she was untouchable, radiant, and undeniably victorious. Ethan's knees buckled beneath him, his chest heaved, his polished suit crumpled, and his carefully constructed facade of control shattered like glass. He lurched forward, ignoring his lawyer's frantic whispers, and fell to the floor before Claire, right there in the center of the courtroom. Gasps rippled through the audience, the sound of disbelief punctuating every echo in the room. "Claire, please," his voice cracked, trembling with raw emotion. "Don't go through with this divorce. Please, that child, it's mine, isn't it? Please come back home." The words spilled out in desperate torrents, unpolished, jagged real. He raised his arms, reaching for her as if by sheer will he could pull her into his grasp and rewind the past. Every spectator froze, the tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. Claire shifted slightly in her chair, hands resting over her belly. Her expression was unreadable. She had anticipated this moment in 1,000 dreams, but seeing Ethan unravel in front of everyone, kneeling, broken, pleading, was different from what she had imagined. She felt a cold clarity settle in her chest. Ethan's voice grew more frantic, louder. "I was wrong. I called you Barren. I blamed you. His words stumbled into sobs, tears streaking his face. "I'll do anything. I'll change. Just please don't take this from me. We can fix this." The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Ethan's pleading. Judge Lawson tapped his gavel lightly, trying to regain control. "Mr. Caldwell, you are out of order. Rise immediately." But Ethan barely heard him. His entire being was focused on Claire, on the child she carried, on the life he believed was slipping through his fingers. Every memory of 5 years of failed marriage, every insult, every cruel accusation, now swirled in his mind as unbearable regret. Claire finally lifted her gaze, meeting Ethan's eyes directly. There was no warmth, only calm resolve. "Ethan, this isn't a negotiation. You chose this when you called me Barren and threw me out. You don't get to undo it now." Ethan shook his head violently, clinging to hope like a drowning man. "No, you don't understand. I was blind. I see now. That child, it's mine. We can." His lawyer tugged at his arm, whispering harshly, "Sir, stop. You're embarrassing yourself." But Ethan didn't stop. Every ounce of pride had vanished. He was on the courtroom floor, shaking, pleading with the woman who had once been his wife, desperate for a miracle that he wasn't entitled to. The gallery murmured, the spectators' curiosity turning into a quiet awe at the raw, unfiltered display of human emotion. Some leaned forward, captivated. Others shook their heads at the spectacle. This wasn't just a legal proceeding anymore. It was a scene of reckoning, of raw vulnerability exposed for all to witness. Ethan's tears fell freely, wetting the floor. His voice, once commanding in boardrooms and social circles, now quivered with desperation. "Please, Claire, I'll love you. I'll respect you. Just come back. Don't leave me empty-handed. I was wrong. I was wrong all along." Claire's expression didn't change. Her calm, unwavering gaze met his pleading eyes. She didn't need to speak. Her silence carried more weight than words, louder than any argument he could make. The judge's gavel struck again, sharper this time. "Mr. Caldwell, if you do not return to your seat immediately, I will have no choice but to hold you in contempt." Even then, Ethan stayed on his knees, his hands trembling, eyes wide, as if sheer persistence could bend reality to his will. He reached toward her one last time, hoping, begging silently for her to look at him not as the man who had failed, but as the man she might forgive. But Claire's eyes, steady and unwavering, told him all he needed to know. There would be no turning back. His pleas, no matter how heartfelt, could not undo the choices he had made, nor erase the years of pain he had caused. And in that moment, kneeling on the cold courtroom floor, Ethan Caldwell realized that the life he had tried to control, the woman he had discarded, and the future he had assumed was his forever, all of it had moved on without him. The courtroom doors opened once more, and all heads turned instinctively. Daniel Harper stepped inside with the easy confidence of a man who belonged not just beside Claire, but in the life she had reclaimed. His navy blazer was perfectly fitted, his tie straight, his posture relaxed yet commanding. Every eye followed him, but Ethan's widened the most. Daniel walked directly toward Claire, ignoring the scattered murmurs and curious glances. He bent slightly and pressed a gentle kiss on her cheek, a gesture both intimate and public, a quiet declaration that this was his place now. The action was simple, yet it struck Ethan with the force of a thunderclap. His jaw dropped, his hands shook, and the air seemed to constrict around him. Claire's eyes lifted to meet Ethan's, unwavering and filled with a strength he had never fully understood until now. Her voice, calm and unwavering, carried clearly across the room. For 5 years, you called me Barren. You accused me, humiliated me, and cast me aside. But the truth is, it was you who was incapable. A stunned silence followed. Gasps echoed off the courthouse walls. The audience froze in disbelief, witnesses whispering among themselves. Ethan's mind reeled, his face drained of color. Every accusation he had made, every insult hurled in his anger, now returned to him like a mirror of shame. Daniel moved slightly, his arm brushing Claire's protectively. His gaze met Ethan's once, not with malice, but with calm certainty. Ethan flinched as though struck by a physical blow. Years of arrogance and denial could not shield him from the undeniable reality. He had been wrong, utterly and irrevocably. Claire placed her hands firmly on her belly, accentuating the undeniable truth of life growing inside her. This child is living proof that I was never the problem. You destroyed our marriage with your pride and cruelty. And now, it is too late for you to undo what you cannot reclaim. Ethan's legs buckled, and he collapsed fully onto the cold courtroom floor. His hands scraped against the tile as he tried to hold on to dignity, but none remained. Tears streaked his face as he realized that everything he had assumed about control, power, and judgment had crumbled in the space of a single moment. Judge Lawson banged his gavel, calling for order, but even his commanding voice could not pierce the heavy silence that had settled over the courtroom. Every spectator felt the gravity of the revelation, witnessing a man's hubris unravel publicly, irreversibly. Ethan's lawyer knelt beside him, whispering reassurances, but Ethan barely heard. His mind was trapped on Claire's words, on Daniel's calm presence, on the life and love he had cast aside. His entire identity, once so carefully constructed, now fell hollow and meaningless. Claire stood gracefully, Daniel at her side, and together they walked slowly toward the exit. Each step carried purpose, each movement a declaration of her autonomy. She did not glance back, for there was no reason to. The chapter Ethan had tried to dominate had closed without him, and her life was moving forward, vibrant and whole. Behind them, Ethan remained on the floor, trembling, destroyed by the truth that could no longer be denied. The courtroom seemed to pulse with the intensity of the revelation, the echoes of Claire's words hanging in the air like a storm's aftershock. In that moment, it became painfully clear to everyone present. A life once dismissed, a woman once maligned, had not only survived but flourished. And Ethan, the man who had once wielded power and pride as his shields, was left to reckon with the undeniable consequences of his choices, powerless to reclaim what he had lost. Life often unfolds in unexpected ways. Pride, impatience, and cruelty can close doors permanently, while patience, self-love, and resilience open paths to happiness. True worth is not defined by others' judgments, and sometimes, being pushed aside is the very push needed to discover a better life. So, what do you think, viewers? Could Ethan have handled things differently? Or was Claire's strength inevitable? Remember, your worth isn't defined by anyone else. Stand strong, love yourself, and never let pride or cruelty block your happiness. Comment below. What would you have done if you were Claire? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that hit close to home. Welcome back, everyone. We thought it was over when Claire walked out of that courtroom pregnant and proud, didn't we? Well, the storm wasn't finished. Ethan wasn't ready to let go, and what happened next will shock you even more. Let's dive into part 2. The courthouse emptied slowly, murmurs drifting behind the polished oak doors until only silence clung to the walls. Ethan Miller sat slumped on the wooden bench, staring at the grain beneath his shoes as though it might rearrange itself and explain what had just happened. He had frozen earlier, unable to breathe when Claire Anderson had walked in with her hand resting lightly on her pregnant belly, her smile radiant, her eyes untouched by regret. And then Daniel Carter had appeared, brushed her cheek with the gentlest kiss, and together they had walked out, leaving Ethan to collapse in his own wreckage. When he finally rose, hours had slipped away, and the janitor cleared his throat behind him, waiting to lock up. Ethan dragged himself home, his townhouse echoing with emptiness. Once, he had thought this place would ring with children's laughter, walls brightened with crayon drawings, Claire humming in the kitchen. Now it was sterile, too clean, a showroom of what never came to be. He dropped his keys onto the counter, their metallic clatter too loud in the stillness. His reflection stared at him from the glass door of the oven. Eyes bloodshot, jaw tight, the face of a man who had built his identity on control, but had lost everything he tried to grip too tightly. His phone buzzed with a message from his sister. "You embarrassed us in court today. Don't call until you've figured yourself out." Even his own family, once his defenders, now shrank from his disgrace. He had strutted for years, blaming Claire for every failed fertility attempt, using the word Barren like a weapon. And then, like a cruel twist in a drama he never authored, she had turned up glowing with life, carrying another man's child. That night he couldn't sleep. He sat by the window with the blinds half drawn, drinking whiskey he barely tasted. The amber liquid burned down his throat, but it couldn't quiet his mind. He replayed the image of Claire entering the courtroom, radiant, transformed. Each time the memory surfaced, his chest tightened with disbelief. It had to be mine, he told himself. She must have conceived before I pushed her out. That baby is proof she betrayed me. The thought grew roots in his mind. At 3 a.m, he grabbed an old photo album from the shelf, flipping through pictures of him and Claire in better years. Holidays, birthdays, those hopeful anniversaries where they still believed things would change. He jabbed his finger at one of the photos where she smiled brightly at a picnic table. "You belong to me," he whispered into the empty room. "If you're carrying a child, it started here, under my roof." His obsession hardened by dawn. The whiskey bottle lay empty, the floor littered with paper scraps from notes he had scribbled in frustration. Dates of their last intimacy, calculations he thought would prove his suspicion. When the first light of day crept in, painting the room pale gold, he felt no peace, only the tremor of obsession. In the days that followed, Ethan's behavior grew stranger. He showed up unannounced at his parents' house, trying to convince them. "Think about it," he said, pacing their kitchen, hands shaking. She couldn't conceive with me for 5 years. Then suddenly 6 months later she's pregnant? It's too close. That child is mine. His father avoided his eyes, stirring coffee with deliberate slowness. His mother wrung her hands but said nothing. When he demanded their support, they gave him none. The shame of the courtroom still weighed on them. Back at his townhouse, he poured all his energy into building his case. He spent hours online reading about paternity laws, DNA testing, court procedures. The glow of the laptop illuminated his hollow cheeks at midnight as he scrolled through family court precedents. His conviction grew darker with each click. He no longer saw it as a desperate hope. He saw it as justice. Yet beneath that determination pulsed something he refused to acknowledge. Guilt. He remembered nights when Claire had cried quietly in the bedroom, turned away from him, whispering prayers he never joined. He had blamed her, called her failures a curse, without once submitting himself to examination. And now, with her belly round and full, she had turned those whispered prayers into something tangible, without him. When sleep came, it was restless. He dreamed of a hospital delivery room where Claire handed him a newborn, only to snatch it back as Daniel appeared. He would wake drenched in sweat, heart racing, gasping into the dark. One evening, unable to bear the silence, he drove past Claire's new neighborhood. Through the windshield, he glimpsed her silhouette against warm lamplight, Daniel's arm around her as they arranged tiny clothes on a drying rack. The sight twisted inside him, half rage, half despair. He pulled away before they noticed, tires crunching gravel, his pulse pounding. By the end of the week, Ethan knew he would not stop. He couldn't live with the possibility that the child might be his, raised by another man, while he carried the blame for a barrenness that might not have been hers after all. He pressed his palms into the kitchen counter and made his decision. He would go back to court. If the system had humiliated him once, it would now vindicate him. He would demand the truth, even if it broke him further. For Ethan Miller, emptiness was no longer enough. He wanted proof. He wanted possession. And he would not let Claire's new life move forward without dragging his shadow across it. Claire Anderson leaned against the nursery doorframe, her smile gentle as Daniel Carter knelt on the floor, tightening the last screw of a white crib. The room smelled faintly of fresh paint and lavender, walls softened by pale yellow tones Daniel had chosen because he said they reminded him of sunlight. Baby clothes, folded neatly in wicker baskets, lined the dresser. Claire's hands moved to her rounded belly, feeling the flutter of a tiny kick beneath her palm. The moment steadied her, anchoring her to the life she had built after so much sorrow. Daniel rose, wiping sweat from his brow, his grin wide and boyish. "Not bad for a corporate man, huh?" he teased, brushing sawdust from his jeans. Claire laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're more patient with screws and bolts than you ever are with emails." He stepped close, pressing his forehead to hers, the smell of soap and cedar lingering on him. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen. Not as a failure, not as a burden, but as a woman loved completely. Their days flowed with simple joy. On Saturdays they walked hand in hand through small boutiques, picking baby shoes and blankets they didn't yet need, but delighted in choosing. On weekdays, Daniel accompanied her to prenatal appointments, never once letting her sit alone in the sterile waiting room. When the doctor turned the screen toward them, revealing the fuzzy outline of their son, Daniel squeezed her hand until her knuckles whitened. "He's perfect," he whispered. Claire's eyes brimmed with tears, not from fear, but from wonder. At night, when the baby stirred and Claire shifted uncomfortably in bed, Daniel would fetch warm milk, fluff her pillows, or simply lay beside her until she drifted back to sleep. Their home vibrated with anticipation, every corner echoing with laughter and quiet plans. Where once her world had been filled with tension, hushed arguments and silent accusations. Now it breathed with light and calm. Yet, in quieter moments, Ethan's shadow crept back into her mind. She remembered the courtroom, his face blanching when he saw her belly, his voice trembling as he begged to undo the divorce. It haunted her not because she missed him, but because she knew him. Ethan never surrendered easily. His pride had always been larger than his love. That kind of man would not walk away without trying to reclaim what he had lost. Daniel noticed her distraction one evening as they sat on the porch swing, a soft summer breeze rustling the leaves. "What's weighing on you?" he asked gently, sliding an arm around her. She hesitated, then sighed. "Ethan, I know he's not done." He looked at me like he was already planning his next move. Daniel's jaw tightened, though his voice remained calm. "Let him try. The truth is on our side, and you're not alone this time." His words grounded her. She rested her head against his shoulder, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Unlike Ethan, Daniel didn't need to control her to prove his worth. He gave her space, dignity, and a partnership built on trust. That was why she could face whatever storm Ethan might bring. She wasn't walking into it alone. Still, the call came sooner than expected. A neatly folded letter arrived by certified mail, the envelope cold against her fingertips. Claire opened it at the kitchen table while Daniel looked on. The words were sharp, printed on legal stationery. Ethan Miller petitioned for paternity testing, claiming her child may have been conceived during their marriage. Claire felt her pulse spike, anger mixing with exhaustion. Daniel read the document, his expression unreadable. Finally, he looked at her and said, "We'll meet him in court, and we'll end this for good." Claire nodded slowly, her hand on her belly, reassuring the life inside her that none of this turmoil could touch what they were building. The night before the first hearing, she stood by the window of the nursery, staring at the crib. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman transformed, not the frightened wife who once endured accusations in silence, but a mother ready to defend her child, a partner standing firm beside a man who cherished her. Ethan could drag her through courtrooms and paperwork, but he could never again shrink her into shadows. She whispered softly to her unborn son, words carried like a promise into the night. "You will never know the weight of someone else's blame. You will grow in love, not in fear." And with Daniel's steady hand resting against the small of her back, she turned away from the window, ready for whatever battle lay ahead. The courthouse smelled faintly of polished wood and paper, its echoing halls filled with the shuffle of lawyers and nervous litigants. Claire Anderson adjusted her white maternity dress as she walked beside Daniel Carter, their hands interlocked, their steps deliberate. She had imagined never stepping into a courtroom again after her divorce had been finalized, but Ethan Miller's persistence had dragged her back. His petition for paternity testing had been accepted, and now they faced him once more under the stern gaze of the law. Inside the courtroom, Ethan sat stiffly at the plaintiff's table, his navy suit pressed sharply, his tie knotted with precision. To anyone else, he looked composed, but his eyes betrayed him, flickering nervously as he scanned the room. When he saw Claire enter, her figure radiant with late pregnancy, his jaw tightened. The image cut into him like a blade. It was proof of the life he once dismissed, and he clung desperately to the belief that this child was his. The judge, a silver-haired woman with clear glasses perched on her nose, called the session to order. Her tone carried the weight of authority, filling the room with silence. Ethan's lawyer rose first, his voice sharp, presenting Ethan's claim. "Your Honor, this child may very well have been conceived while my client and Mrs. Anderson were still married. For the sake of truth, we request a court-ordered paternity test upon the child's birth." Claire sat calmly, her hands folded in her lap, her face serene though her pulse raced. Daniel's hand rested on hers, his thumb brushing lightly, grounding her. Her attorney rose, countering with steady conviction. "Your Honor, my client has no objection. She knows the truth and is confident the results will speak louder than accusations. But she also requests that if the test proves Mr. Miller is not the father, he be legally barred from further interfering in her life." The judge paused, her gaze shifting between Ethan, who shifted uncomfortably in his chair, and Claire, who remained steady. The murmurs from the small gallery of onlookers quieted. "Very well," the judge said. "The petition is granted. Upon the birth of the child, a DNA test will be conducted. If Mr. Miller is not the biological father, the court will ensure he has no further standing in this matter." The gavel's strike punctuated her words, final, yet opening a door Ethan believed would vindicate him. He allowed himself a small, smug smile, leaning back in his chair. To him, this was justice in motion. He was convinced that somewhere in the timeline of their crumbling marriage, this child had been conceived under his roof, that it was his blood and name carried in Claire's womb. He clung to this belief, as if it were the last rope holding his fractured dignity together. Claire caught his look, the smug curve of his lips, and felt no fear. She turned slightly, whispering to Daniel, "Let him smile. The truth will wipe it away soon enough." Daniel gave her hand a gentle squeeze, his calm eyes focused on her, not Ethan. Their strength came not from arrogance, but from certainty. The proceedings ended quickly, the next date set for after the child's birth. As they exited the courthouse, reporters and curious onlookers tried to capture photos, but Claire kept her head high. She would not let Ethan's grasping pride steal her dignity again. Meanwhile, Ethan left the building feeling a twisted sense of triumph. Alone in the back of his car, he muttered to himself, "She's lying. She has to be. That child is mine. It started with me." His reflection in the tinted window stared back, hollow and tired, but he ignored it. Pride convinced him he was right. That night, Claire sat with Daniel at their dining table, the letter from the court resting between them. She traced the edge of the paper with her fingertip. "It's exhausting," she admitted quietly. Daniel leaned forward, his voice steady. "It's the last fight. Once the truth is written in black and white, he won't be able to touch us again." She nodded, exhaling slowly. The weight of years of blame and accusation still lingered, but this time, she felt the finish line drawing near. Soon, Ethan's voice would no longer echo in her life. Soon, the truth would silence him completely. In her heart, she knew this child was more than just proof of Ethan's lies. He was a symbol of resilience, of a life rebuilt from ashes, of love rediscovered in its purest form. No courtroom, no petition, and no man could take that from her. The winter sun glared weakly through the frosted glass of a hospital entrance as Claire Anderson walked in. Her newborn son nestled in a soft blue blanket against her chest. Daniel Carter carried the diaper bag, his free hand gently guiding her steps. Their child, barely 3 weeks old, slept soundly, oblivious to the storm that had yet to pass. This was the day the court had set for the DNA test. The day when Ethan Miller's claim would finally be measured against science. Ethan was already inside the waiting room, his posture unnervingly stiff. He wore another immaculate suit, his tie pinched too tightly at the neck. His eyes darted from Claire to the bundle in her arms, hunger and desperation flickering across his expression. When he saw the child's tiny hand peek out from the blanket, his chest heaved with shallow breaths. To him, that little boy represented vindication. He convinced himself he saw his own likeness already, though the baby's features were far too new to reveal any resemblance. The nurse called their names, leading them into a sterile room with white walls and gleaming instruments. The tension weighed heavier than the fluorescent lights above. Claire sat carefully in a chair, holding her son close. Daniel stood at her side, shoulders squared. Ethan entered last, his steps uneven despite his attempt at composure. The nurse explained the procedure in a calm, practiced tone. "We'll collect a cheek swab from the baby first, then from both of you gentlemen. Results will be sent directly to the court for authentication. It usually takes 2 weeks." Claire gently handed her son over for the swab, the infant fussing for only a moment before quieting again. Daniel leaned close, whispering to him, "It's all right, little one. Just a quick moment." His steady presence calmed both mother and child. Ethan watched every movement, his lips pressed thin. When it was his turn, he leaned forward sharply, almost aggressively, as though the force of his submission could bend the truth to his will. The nurse recoiled slightly at his intensity, but completed the task without comment. Daniel followed with quiet dignity, his composure unshaken. When the samples were sealed and labeled, the nurse left them alone for a brief moment. Silence stretched like a taut wire. Ethan broke it first, his voice low but sharp. "You can keep pretending, Claire, but when the truth comes out, you'll regret every smile you flaunted." Claire turned toward him, her eyes steady, her voice soft yet cutting. "The only one living in pretense here is you, Ethan. This test isn't for me. It's for you. Because deep down, you already know the truth." Daniel placed a hand gently on her shoulder, signaling restraint, but his eyes never left Ethan's. Calm, unwavering, almost pitying. 2 weeks later, the courtroom brimmed with anticipation. Reporters lined the hallways, sensing a story about betrayal, pride, and vindication. Ethan entered briskly, his chin lifted, wearing the mask of a man about to reclaim his honor. He had told himself each day that this was his moment, his chance to prove that Claire had carried his blood after all. Claire arrived with Daniel, their baby left safely with her mother. She walked with quiet grace, her face calm, her confidence unshaken. Daniel's arm rested protectively along her back, a silent reassurance. Judge Hamilton presided, her tone crisp as she called the court to order. The clerk handed her the sealed envelope containing the results. The air thickened as she opened it, adjusted her glasses, and read. "According to the DNA analysis," Judge Hamilton said, her voice steady, "Mr. Ethan Miller is not the biological father of the minor child in question." The words hung in the air like a bell tolling through the room. Ethan's face crumpled instantly, the mask shattering. His mouth opened soundlessly, his hands gripping the edge of the table, until his knuckles turned white. The gavel had not yet struck, but the verdict had already sentenced him to his own reality. Daniel reached for Claire's hand beneath the table, squeezing gently. Claire exhaled, the weight of 5 years of false blame dissolving in that single sentence. She whispered to herself, "Finally." The judge continued, her voice firm. "Given this result, Mr. Miller has no legal claim to the child, nor will he be permitted to interfere in Mrs. Anderson's family life moving forward." Gasps rippled among the onlookers, but Claire did not turn to them. Her gaze remained steady, forward unmoved. Ethan slumped into his chair, shoulders hunched, face buried in trembling hands. His world, built on pride and accusation, had collapsed under the irrefutable truth of science. For Claire, the moment was not one of gloating but of release. The truth had finally spoken louder than all his words, louder than years of blame and humiliation. Her freedom was now undeniable. The courtroom emptied slowly after Judge Hamilton's final gavel strike, but Ethan Miller remained hunched at his table, motionless. His lawyer whispered in his ear, urging him to stand, but Ethan could not move. The noise of shuffling papers, the scrape of chairs, and the murmurs of strangers leaving all blended into a hollow echo inside his head. Every sound reminded him of the verdict he could not escape. The child was not his. The 5 years of bitterness, the cruel accusations, the endless pride, it had all been built on a lie he had crafted to shield himself from the truth. He finally lifted his face, streaked with tears, and glanced toward the exit. Claire Anderson was already walking out, Daniel Carter beside her. They did not look back. She carried herself with the poise of a woman who had survived the storm and found peace on the other side. Daniel's quiet strength, his arm gently guiding her, only emphasized how far Ethan had fallen. When Ethan returned to his townhouse that evening, the silence struck him harder than ever. The sleek furniture gleamed under dim lights, untouched for months, as though the space itself refused to comfort him. He poured a glass of whiskey, his hand trembling so much that the liquid splashed onto the counter. He didn't drink it. He simply stared at the glass until his vision blurred, then set it down untouched. The man who once thrived on control had lost all sense of direction. In the days that followed, the news of the DNA results spread quietly among family and friends. Ethan's mother, once so quick to call Claire Barren, could not face the shame. She refused to answer his calls, embarrassed by the very son she had defended. His sisters avoided him, their whispers replaced by silence. At work, the confidence he had always projected faltered. Colleagues noticed his distracted mind, his late arrivals, his poor performance. Clients pulled away, unwilling to trust a man so obviously unraveling. Meanwhile, Claire's world blossomed. She and Daniel brought their baby boy home. The nursery painted a soft sky blue with tiny stars scattered across the ceiling. Every cry, every coo, every sleepy smile filled their small home with a kind of music Claire had once believed she would never hear. Daniel would come home from work, loosen his tie, and immediately scoop up the baby, his laughter echoing warmly. Claire, watching from the doorway, felt the ache of old wounds slowly fade, replaced by a steady rhythm of joy. She thought of Ethan sometimes, but only in passing. The court had ordered him never to disturb her family again, and she trusted the finality of that judgment. His shadow, once looming, had finally lifted. What remained was freedom. Freedom to love without fear, to raise her son without blame, and to move forward without regret. Ethan, left alone, wandered through the hollow rooms of his townhouse. Nights stretched endlessly, his mind replaying every cruel word he had once thrown at Claire. Barren, he had called her. Fruitless. Now, those words mocked him in the silence, echoing back with every step he took across the polished floor. He realized too late that the love he had destroyed was the only real treasure he had ever known. Claire, on the other hand, woke each morning to the sound of her baby's cries and Daniel's gentle hum as he rocked him back to sleep. Their home was not grand, not perfect, but it was full. Laughter replaced silence. Tenderness replaced bitterness, and hope replaced despair. The life Ethan had tried to deny her had become her greatest truth. And so, the paths diverged completely. Ethan collapsed into the shadows of his own making, stripped of excuses, left with only his pride in ruins. Claire and Daniel, hand in hand, rose into the light of a future built on trust, respect, and the sweet cries of a child who symbolized not only life but redemption. The moral lesson was clear for all who watched their story unfold. Never let pride destroy what love could heal, and never blame others for what you refuse to face within yourself. In the end, truth always reveals itself, and it always sets the right people free.
The worst part wasn't the way Trevor Martinez cornered her by the dessert table, his cologne thick and suffocating as he leaned too close. It wasn't even how he grabbed her wrist when she tried to walk away, his fingers pressing hard enough to leave marks on her brown skin. The worst part was when he stood up on a chair right there in the middle of her cousin Shayla's wedding reception and announced to everyone that Nia Johnson was his promised wife. "Ladies and gentlemen," Trevor called out, tapping his champagne glass with a butter knife. His voice carried across the elegant ballroom of the Grand Plaza Hotel, causing conversations to stop and heads to turn. "I have wonderful news to share on this beautiful day. My lovely Nia here and I are finally ready to honor the promise our families made when we were children." Nia felt the blood drain from her face. Around the room, wedding guests turned to stare at her with curious smiles, completely unaware of what was happening. Her cousin Shayla, radiant in her white wedding dress, beamed from across the room and gave her an encouraging thumbs up. Even Shayla didn't understand. "Trevor, get down from there," Nia whispered harshly, tugging at his navy blue suit jacket. "You're embarrassing yourself." But Trevor only smiled wider, his dark eyes gleaming with something that made Nia's stomach turn. "Don't be shy, Mia Moore. Everyone should know that you belong to me." The word belong hit Nia like a slap. She had spent the last 5 years building a life for herself in Chicago, working as a nurse at Children's Memorial Hospital, living in her own apartment, making her own decisions. She had worked so hard to escape the small town of Millbrook, Texas, where girls were expected to marry young and never leave home. "I don't belong to anyone," she said firmly, but her voice was lost in the applause that erupted from the wedding guests who thought they were witnessing a romantic proposal. Trevor jumped down from the chair, and before Nia could react, he was on one knee in front of her, pulling out a ring box. The diamond was huge, gaudy, and completely wrong for her taste. Everything about this moment was wrong. "Nia Marie Johnson," Trevor said loudly, making sure everyone could hear, "will you finally make our family's dream come true and become my wife?" The room fell silent. Every eye in the ballroom was on her. She could see her Aunt Carmen nodding encouragingly from table 6, and several of Trevor's relatives who had driven up from Texas were recording with their phones. Shayla had stopped dancing with her new husband and was watching with an expectant smile. Nia's hands shook as she looked down at Trevor. This was the same boy who had pulled her hair in elementary school and told everyone she was his girlfriend even when she said no. The same teenager who had followed her around at high school parties, claiming they were dating when they absolutely were not. The same young man who had shown up at her college graduation uninvited and told her parents they should start planning a wedding. "Trevor, please get up," she said quietly, hoping to end this without causing a scene at Shayla's wedding. "We need to talk about this privately." "No more talking," Trevor said, grabbing her left hand. "No more running away to Chicago and pretending like you don't know what's expected of you. Your daddy and mine shook hands on this when you turned 18. You've had 5 years to play around, but now it's time to come home and be my wife. Did you know that sometimes the people who claim to love you are actually the ones who want to control you most? Have you ever been in a situation where you felt trapped by other people's expectations? If this story speaks to you, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments about whether Nia should fight back or find another way out. Nia tried to pull her hand away, but Trevor's grip tightened. "Let go of me. Just say yes, Nia. Make this easy." I said let go. But Trevor wasn't listening. He was already sliding the ring toward her finger, and some guests were starting to cheer, thinking her resistance was just nerves. Nia looked around desperately, searching for an escape route, but Trevor's cousins had moved closer, blocking her path to the exit. That's when she saw him. Standing near the bar, watching the whole scene unfold with a frown, was the most handsome man Nia had ever seen. He was tall, with warm brown skin and close-cropped black hair. His charcoal gray suit was clearly expensive, tailored perfectly to his broad shoulders and lean frame. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. Dark brown eyes that seemed to see exactly what was happening and didn't like it one bit. Without thinking, Nia made a decision that would change everything. She yanked her hand free from Trevor's grasp and walked straight toward the stranger. "I'm so sorry," Nia whispered as she reached the handsome stranger by the bar. "Please help me." Up close he was even more striking. His skin was a rich brown, and he had the kind of strong jawline that belonged in magazines. His dark eyes studied her face with concern, taking in her flushed cheeks and the way her hands were shaking. "What do you need?" he asked quietly, his voice deep and reassuring. Behind her, she could hear Trevor calling her name, his voice getting louder and more demanding. "Nia, get back here. Don't make me come get you." "Kiss me," Nia said quickly. "Please. I know this is crazy, but I need you to kiss me right now." The stranger's eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't look shocked. Instead, he looked angry on her behalf. "Are you sure?" "Yes. Please." Without another word, he set down his drink and cupped her face gently in his hands. His palms were warm against her skin, and for the first time all evening, Nia felt safe. "Follow my lead," he murmured, and then his lips touched hers. The kiss was perfect. Soft at first, then deeper as Nia leaned into him. He tasted like mint and champagne, and he kissed her like she was precious, like she mattered. It was nothing like the aggressive, demanding kisses Trevor had forced on her over the years. This kiss made her feel cherished. When they broke apart, the stranger kept his hands on her face, looking into her eyes like they'd known each other forever. "There you are, baby," he said loudly, making sure Trevor could hear. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Nia nearly melted with relief. "I was just talking to an old friend from home," she said, playing along. "Cameron, this is Trevor Martinez." "Trevor, this is my boyfriend, Cameron." Cameron's arm slid around her waist, pulling her close to his side. He was solid and warm, and Nia felt herself relaxing for the first time since Trevor had grabbed her wrist. "Nice to meet you, Trevor," Cameron said politely, but there was steel in his voice. "I hope you weren't giving my girlfriend any trouble." Trevor's face had gone red with anger and embarrassment. The wedding guests who had been watching the proposal were now murmuring among themselves, clearly confused about what was happening. "Your girlfriend?" Trevor sputtered. "She's not your girlfriend. She's promised to me. Our families have an arrangement." Cameron's arm tightened protectively around Nia. "I don't know anything about that, but what I do know is that Nia is with me. And she looks pretty upset right now." "This is ridiculous," Trevor snapped. "Nia, stop playing games. You know you belong with me." "Actually," Cameron said, his voice getting colder, "she doesn't belong with anyone. She's a grown woman who can make her own choices. And it looks like she's chosen." Nia looked up at Cameron gratefully. No one had ever stood up to Trevor like this before. Not her parents, not her friends from home, no one. "Thank you," she whispered. Cameron smiled down at her, and Nia felt her heart skip. "Anything for you, sweetheart." Trevor was still sputtering, but now his family members were starting to look embarrassed. His mother, a thin woman in a bright green dress, hurried over and grabbed his arm. "Mijo, come on," she said quietly. "You're making a scene at the wedding." "But Mama, she's mine," Trevor protested. "Papa and her daddy made a deal." "Maybe we should discuss this later," Cameron suggested diplomatically. "This is Shayla's special day. Let's not ruin it." Nia squeezed Cameron's hand gratefully. Even in the middle of helping her, he was thinking about her cousin's wedding. That showed more class than Trevor had ever displayed. Shayla herself appeared then, still in her wedding dress but looking worried. "Nia, honey, is everything okay?" I saw Trevor on his knee and then... "Everything's fine," Nia said quickly. "Shayla, I'd like you to meet Cameron." "Cameron, this is my cousin Shayla, the beautiful bride." Cameron immediately extended his hand with a warm smile. "Congratulations on your wedding. You look absolutely stunning." Shayla beamed and shook his hand. "Thank you so much. And you're Nia's boyfriend?" "She never mentioned you." "We've been keeping it quiet," Cameron said smoothly. "Long-distance relationships can be complicated." "Oh, how romantic," Shayla gushed. "Well, I'm just thrilled you could make it to the wedding. You two make such a lovely couple." Trevor was still standing there with his mouth open, holding the rejected ring box. His mother was tugging on his arm, trying to get him to leave, but he seemed frozen in shock. "This isn't over, Nia," he said finally. "You can't run from your responsibilities forever." "She's not running from anything," Cameron said firmly. "She's exactly where she wants to be." After Trevor and his family finally left the reception area, Nia realized she was still pressed against Cameron's side, his arm around her waist. She should probably step away, but she didn't want to. He felt like safety and strength, and after years of dealing with Trevor's harassment, she needed that feeling. "I'm so sorry," she said, finally stepping back a little. "I can't believe I just kissed a complete stranger. You must think I'm crazy." Cameron's hand found hers and squeezed gently. "I think you're brave. And I don't think we're strangers anymore." Nia felt herself blushing. "I don't even know your last name." "Cameron Reed," he said with a smile. "And you're Nia Johnson, the nurse from Chicago who just saved both of us from a very awkward evening." "How did you know I was a nurse?" "Lucky guess. You have gentle hands and you were worried about helping people even when you needed help yourself." Nia's heart did that skipping thing again. This man was not only gorgeous, he was observant and kind. "Would you like to dance?" Cameron asked. "I figure if we're supposed to be dating, we should probably act like it." "I'd love to," Nia said, accepting his outstretched hand. As Cameron led her onto the dance floor, Nia caught sight of Trevor glowering at them from across the room. She knew this wasn't over. Trevor never gave up easily. But for now, in Cameron's arms, she felt protected and valued in a way she'd never experienced before. She just hoped this amazing man wouldn't disappear when the wedding was over. The next morning, Nia woke up in her hotel room with a pounding headache and a phone that wouldn't stop ringing. She grabbed it from the nightstand, squinting at the caller ID. Trevor. Again. She'd been ignoring his calls since 6 a.m., but now it was almost noon and he clearly wasn't going to give up. With a sigh, she answered. "What do you want, Trevor?" I want you to stop playing games." His voice came through angry and demanding. "I talked to your daddy last night. He reminded you about the contract." Nia sat up straight in bed. "What contract? Don't act like you don't know. When you turned 18, your daddy borrowed money from mine to pay for your nursing school. The agreement was that you'd marry me when you finished school and got settled. Well, you've been settled in Chicago for 3 years now. Time to pay up." A cold dread filled Nia's stomach. Her father had paid for nursing school, that was true. She'd always wondered how he'd managed it on his mechanic's salary. But a marriage contract? That seemed medieval, even for her traditional family. "Trevor, even if that's true, which I doubt, you can't force someone into marriage over a debt. Watch me. I'll be at your hotel in an hour. We're driving back to Millbrook today to plan the wedding." The line went dead. Nia stared at her phone in shock. This was getting worse by the minute. She needed help, but she didn't know anyone in Dallas except her cousin, and Shayla was on her honeymoon. A soft knock at her door made her jump. She looked through the peephole and saw Cameron standing in the hallway, wearing jeans and a blue button-down shirt that made his eyes look even more gorgeous than she remembered. Nia opened the door, suddenly very aware that she was wearing pajama shorts and an oversized t-shirt. "Cameron? How did you find my room?" He held up a coffee cup and a small paper bag. "I asked at the front desk if they could deliver breakfast to Shayla's cousin from Chicago. They said you were in room 847. He paused, studying her face. "You look upset. Are you okay?" Without thinking, Nia stepped aside to let him in. "Trevor called. He says there's some kind of contract between our families. He wants to take me back to Texas today." Cameron set the coffee and bag on the small table by the window. "What kind of contract?" "He claims my father borrowed money from his family to pay for my nursing school, and the agreement was that I'd marry Trevor when I was ready." Nia sank into the chair across from him. "I don't know if it's true or not, but I wouldn't put it past my dad." "Even if it's true, you can't be forced into marriage over a debt," Cameron said firmly. "That's not legal." "That's what I told him, but Trevor doesn't seem to care about legal." Cameron was quiet for a moment, then leaned forward in his chair. "Nia, I have an idea. But you might think it's crazy." "Crazier than kissing a stranger to avoid getting engaged?" That made him smile. "Fair point. Here's what I'm thinking. What if we make our fake relationship real? Just for a while. Long enough to get Trevor to back off and give you time to figure out the legal situation." Nia stared at him. "You mean like actually date?" "I mean I'll be your boyfriend. For real. We'll spend time together, I'll take you on dates, and when Trevor or anyone else asks, you can honestly say you're in a committed relationship." "Cameron, you don't even know me. Why would you want to get involved in my mess?" He reached across the table and took her hand. "Because what Trevor is doing is wrong. Because you deserve better. And because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since last night." Nia felt her cheeks warm. "You haven't? Not even a little bit. That kiss, it meant something to me. I'd like to see if it could mean something to both of us." Before Nia could respond, there was a loud banging on her door. "Nia Marie Johnson, open this door right now," Trevor's voice boomed from the hallway. Nia's eyes went wide with fear, but Cameron stood up calmly and walked toward the door. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Protecting you," he said simply and opened the door. Trevor was standing there with 2 other men Nia recognized as his older brothers, Rico and Manuel. All 3 of them looked angry and ready for a fight. "Where is she?" Trevor demanded, trying to push past Cameron into the room. Cameron didn't budge. He was taller than all 3 Martinez brothers, and something in his calm confidence made them hesitate. "Nia is right here," Cameron said evenly. "But she doesn't want to talk to you." "She doesn't get a choice," Rico said, stepping forward. "Family business is family business." "Actually, she gets all the choices," Cameron replied. "She's an adult woman, not property." Trevor's face was getting red again. "This is between me and my fiancée. She's not your fiancée. She never accepted your proposal. In fact, she ran away from it." Nia stood up and moved to Cameron's side. Seeing Trevor with his brothers in the doorway made her feel small and scared, but Cameron's presence gave her strength. "Trevor, please just leave me alone," she said. "I don't want to marry you. I never have." "What you want doesn't matter," Manuel spoke up for the first time. "Your daddy owes our family and this is how it gets paid." "That's not how debts work," Cameron said coldly. "And if you think you can intimidate her, you're wrong. She's not going anywhere with you." "And who's going to stop us?" Trevor sneered. "You." Cameron smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. "If I have to. But I'd rather handle this the easy way." Nia, pack your things. We're leaving. She's not going anywhere with you, Trevor said, stepping forward aggressively. Yes, she is. Cameron's voice carried an authority that made all three brothers pause. Because she wants to. Don't you, sweetheart? Nia looked at Cameron, this amazing man who was willing to stand up to three angry men to protect her. He was offering her a way out, offering to help her when no one else would. Yes, she said firmly. I'm going with Cameron. Trevor looked like he'd been slapped. This isn't over, Nia. You can't run forever. She's not running, Cameron said. She's choosing. And she's choosing me. After Trevor and his brothers left, Nia sank back into her chair, shaking. Are you okay? Cameron asked gently, kneeling beside her chair. I think so. Cameron, I can't ask you to get involved in this. It could get dangerous. You're not asking. I'm offering. And I can handle Trevor Martinez and his brothers. How can you be so sure? Cameron was quiet for a moment. Because I have resources they don't know about. And because letting them bully you is not an option. Nia looked into his kind brown eyes and made her decision. Okay. I accept your help. Good, Cameron said, standing up. Now pack your things. We're going to Chicago. The private jet was Nia's first clue that Cameron Reed was not just any guy with resources. This is yours? She asked, staring at the sleek aircraft waiting on the tarmac at Dallas Love Field. Company jet, Cameron said casually, taking her small suitcase from her hand. It's faster than commercial flights and more private. As they climbed the steps into the plane, Nia felt like she was stepping into another world. The interior was all cream leather and polished wood, with seats that looked more like recliners and a small conference table. Mr. Reed, the flight attendant said with a professional smile. Welcome aboard. We'll be ready for takeoff in 10 minutes. Cameron nodded and guided Nia to a seat by the window. Comfortable? This is incredible, Nia said, running her hand over the buttery soft leather. What kind of company do you work for? Cameron settled into the seat across from her. I don't work for a company. I own one. Reed Industries. The name sounded familiar, but Nia couldn't place it. What kind of business? Technology mostly. Software development, data systems, some government contracts. Cameron's phone buzzed and he glanced at it. Sorry, I need to take this quickly. As Cameron talked quietly into his phone, Nia looked around the jet again. Everything screamed money, from the crystal glasses to the fresh flowers and small vases. She pulled out her own phone and searched for Reed Industries. Her eyes widened as the search results loaded. Reed Industries was a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Cameron Reed wasn't just wealthy, he was Forbes list wealthy. One article called him Chicago's most eligible bachelor, and estimated his net worth at over $2 billion. $2 billion. Nia stared at her phone screen, then at Cameron, who was still talking business in his calm, authoritative voice. This man, this incredibly rich and powerful man, was helping her with her small-town drama. What? All set, Cameron said, putting his phone away. Sorry about that. Cameron, Nia said carefully, I just looked up your company. You went still. And? You're a billionaire. Does that change anything? Nia thought about it. I don't know. Should it? Cameron leaned forward in his seat. I'm still the same guy who kissed you at the wedding. I still think what Trevor is doing to you is wrong. And I still want to help. But why? You could have any woman you want. Why get involved with someone like me? Someone like you? Cameron's voice was sharp. What's that supposed to mean? Someone with problems. Someone poor. Someone whose family apparently sells their daughters to pay off debts. Cameron's expression softened. Nia, look at me. She met his eyes reluctantly. Your family's problems are not your problems. You are an intelligent, beautiful, successful woman who has built a good life for herself. The fact that you come from difficult circumstances just makes you more impressive, not less. Nia felt tears prick her eyes. I can't pay you back for this. The plane, whatever legal help I'm going to need. I can't afford any of it. I'm not asking you to pay me back. But I can't just take advantage of your generosity. Cameron unbuckled his seatbelt and moved to the seat next to her. You're not taking advantage. I'm offering freely. Will you accept my help? The question hung between them. Nia knew she should say no, should find some other way to handle Trevor. But looking into Cameron's sincere brown eyes, she couldn't make herself refuse his kindness. Yes, she said softly. I accept your help. Thank you. Cameron smiled and took her hand. Good. Now tell me about your job. I want to know everything about the real Nia Johnson. For the rest of the flight they talked. Nia told Cameron about her work at Children's Memorial Hospital, about the kids she cared for and how much she loved helping them heal. Cameron told her about growing up poor in Detroit, how he built his company from nothing, and how he used his wealth to fund scholarships for kids like he used to be. By the time they landed in Chicago, Nia realized she was falling for him. Not because he was rich, but because he was kind and smart and genuinely cared about helping people. Cameron's driver picked them up at the airport in a black Mercedes. As they drove through the city toward Cameron's penthouse, Nia's phone rang. Her father. "I should take this," she told Cameron, then answered the call. "Hi, Daddy." "Nia Marie, what is this nonsense I'm hearing about you running off with some stranger?" "His name is Cameron and he's not a stranger. He's my boyfriend." "You don't have a boyfriend. You have a fiancé. Trevor called me this morning very upset." "Daddy, did you really make some kind of contract with the Martinez family about me marrying Trevor?" There was a long pause. "That's complicated, Mija. It's a yes or no question." Another pause. "When you wanted to go to nursing school, we didn't have the money. Miguel Martinez offered to loan it to us, but he wanted assurance that you'd settle down after school instead of running wild in the big city." Nia's heart sank. "So you promised him I'd marry his son." "It was just talk, Mija. Men talking about their children's futures." "Daddy, that's not just talk. That's my life." "You're being dramatic. Trevor is a good boy from a good family. You could do worse." Cameron reached over and took Nia's free hand, squeezing gently. "I could also do better, Daddy. Much better. Nia, you need to come home and work this out with the Martinez family. Don't make me look bad after they helped us." "I'm not coming home. I'm staying in Chicago with Cameron. You don't know anything about this man." Nia looked at Cameron, who was watching her with concern and support in his eyes. "I know enough. I have to go, Daddy. I'll call you later." She hung up and leaned back in the leather seat. "You okay?" Cameron asked. "No. But I will be." Nia squeezed his hand. "Thank you for being here." "I'm not going anywhere," Cameron said firmly. "We'll figure this out together." As they pulled up to Cameron's building, a gleaming tower of glass and steel downtown, Nia realized her life had changed completely in just 24 hours. She was in love with a billionaire, her family was angry with her, and Trevor wasn't going to give up easily. But for the first time in years she felt hopeful. With Cameron by her side, maybe she really could build the life she wanted instead of the life others expected her to live. Cameron's penthouse apartment took up the entire top floor of the building and had floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of Lake Michigan. Nia stood in the living room, feeling small and out of place among the modern furniture and expensive art. "The guest suite is down this hall," Cameron said, carrying her suitcase. "You'll have your own bathroom and sitting area. Make yourself at home." The guest suite was bigger than Nia's entire apartment. The bedroom had a king-sized bed with white linens that looked softer than clouds, and the bathroom had a soaking tub that could fit 3 people. "This is too much," Nia said. "I can stay at my own place." "Not until we know Trevor isn't going to show up there," Cameron replied. "My building has excellent security. You'll be safe here." Cameron's phone rang and he excused himself to take the call. Alone in the luxurious suite, Nia sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process everything that had happened. 24 hours ago, her biggest worry was whether to wear the blue dress or the green one to Shayla's wedding. Now she was hiding from Trevor in a billionaire's penthouse. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." Cameron entered with 2 coffee mugs and a concerned expression. "I just got off the phone with my lawyer. I asked him to look into the legal issues with your family's situation." "What did he say?" Nia accepted the coffee gratefully. "Nothing binding can be enforced without your consent. Even if your father did sign some kind of agreement with Trevor's family, you can't be forced into marriage to pay off a debt. That's not how modern law works." Nia felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. "So Trevor can't actually make me marry him?" "Not legally, no. But..." Cameron sat down in the chair across from the bed. "There could still be financial consequences for your father if he can't repay the loan." The relief Nia had felt vanished. "How much money are we talking about?" "I don't know yet. My lawyer is going to make some calls and find out the details." Nia set her coffee down with shaking hands. "What if it's more than my dad can pay back? What if they come after his business or the house?" Cameron moved to sit beside her on the bed. "Hey, look at me." Nia met his eyes, fighting back tears. "Whatever the amount is, we'll handle it. I can pay off the loan myself if necessary." "Cameron, no. I can't let you pay my family's debts." "Why not?" "Because it's not your responsibility. Because I can't pay you back. Because what?" Because then I'd just be trading one obligation for another, Nia said quietly. Instead of owing Trevor's family, I'd owe you. Cameron's hand found hers. You wouldn't owe me anything. It would be a gift. People don't just give away that kind of money. I do. I give away millions every year through my foundation. Why is helping you different? Nia thought about it. Because this feels personal. Because I'm afraid of what you might expect in return. Cameron was quiet for a long moment. What do you think I expect? I don't know. That's what scares me. Cameron stood up and walked to the window looking out at the lake. When I was 12, my mother got sick. Cancer. The treatments were expensive and we didn't have insurance. My father worked 3 jobs trying to pay for her care, but it wasn't enough. Nia listened, her heart aching for the boy Cameron had been. A neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, heard about our situation. She was an elderly woman who lived alone, and she offered to pay for my mother's treatment. Just like that. No strings attached. Did you take her help? My father's pride almost cost my mother her life. He kept saying he'd find a way to pay Mrs. Thompson back, kept refusing her help while my mother got sicker. Finally, my mother sat him down and told him that sometimes accepting help is the brave thing to do. Cameron turned back to face Nia. Mrs. Thompson saved my mother's life. And when I asked her years later why she helped us, you know what she said? What? She said kindness is meant to be passed forward, not paid back. Nia felt tears spilling down her cheeks. Your mother, did she? She lived. She's 73 now and spoils my sister's kids rotten. Cameron's smile was soft. The point is, Nia, I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Helping you isn't a burden, it's a privilege. Before Nia could respond, Cameron's phone rang again. He glanced at it and frowned. It's my lawyer. I should take this. While Cameron talked to his lawyer in the other room, Nia walked to the window and looked out at the city spread below. Chicago had been her escape from the small-town expectations of Millbrook, but now even here she didn't feel safe from Trevor's demands. Cameron returned with a grim expression. What did he find out? Nia asked. The loan amount is $50,000. Your father has been making payments for the past 5 years, but with interest, he still owes about $35,000. That's not too bad, Nia said, calculating quickly. I have some savings and if I work extra shifts. Nia, there's more. Miguel Martinez is claiming that the interest rate was 40% annually because it was a personal loan with no collateral except the marriage agreement. Nia's legs gave out and she sank into the chair. 40%? That's loan sharking, Cameron finished grimly. Which means the debt has grown much faster than your father expected. Miguel is now claiming your father owes over $100,000. $100,000? Nia's voice was barely a whisper. And if the debt isn't satisfied soon, either through repayment or through you marrying Trevor, Miguel is threatening to take legal action against your father's business. Nia put her head in her hands. Her father's auto repair shop was all he had. If he lost that, he'd lose everything. I have to go back, she said. I have to marry Trevor. No. Cameron's voice was sharp. Absolutely not. Cameron, I can't let my father lose his livelihood because of me. You're not responsible for your father's choices. But I am responsible for helping my family. Cameron knelt in front of her chair and took her hands. Then let me help them. Let me pay off the debt. Nia looked into his earnest brown eyes. Why would you do that for people you've never met? Because they're your family. Because you love them. And because... Cameron paused, seeming to struggle with his words. Because I'm falling in love with you and I can't stand to see you in pain. Nia's breath caught. You're falling in love with me? I know it's crazy. We've known each other for 2 days. But Nia, what I feel for you is real. When I kissed you at the wedding, something changed for me. I want to protect you, to take care of you, to make you happy. Cameron, I'm not asking you to say it back. I'm just asking you to accept my help. Please. Nia studied his face, looking for any sign of deception or hidden motives. All she saw was sincerity and genuine care. If I accept your help, what happens between us? Whatever you want to happen. If you decide you want to just be friends, that's okay. If you want to see where this relationship goes, I'd like that too. But either way, the help comes with no strings attached. Nia thought about Mrs. Thompson, the woman who had saved Cameron's mother. She thought about kindness being passed forward instead of paid back. She thought about the alternative, going back to Millbrook and marrying Trevor to save her father from his own mistakes. Okay, she said finally. I accept your help. Cameron's smile was radiant. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for being trustworthy. Cameron stood and offered her his hand. Now, how about I show you the real Chicago? If you're going to be staying here for a while, you should see what the city has to offer. Nia took his hand, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers. I'd like that. As they left the penthouse together, Nia realized she was no longer just accepting Cameron's help with her Trevor problem. She was accepting the possibility of something beautiful and real with a man who saw her as worthy of protection and care. For a girl who had spent her whole life being told she was someone else's property, that was a gift beyond price. 3 days later, Nia was starting to believe she might actually have a chance at happiness with Cameron. They had spent every evening together, talking over dinner, walking along the lakefront, getting to know each other in ways that went far deeper than their first desperate kiss at the wedding. Cameron was nothing like what she had expected from a billionaire. He was kind to everyone, from his building's doorman to the waitress at the small Italian restaurant they'd discovered in Little Italy. He listened when she talked about her work at the hospital, asking thoughtful questions about her patients and her plans for the future. And when she'd called in sick for the past 3 days, too stressed about the Trevor situation to focus on caring for children, Cameron had supported her decision without making her feel guilty about it. But their peaceful bubble burst on Thursday morning when Cameron's doorman called to announce that Nia had visitors. Who is it? Cameron asked, glancing at Nia with concern. A Miguel Martinez and his son Trevor, sir. They say they're here to see Ms. Johnson. Nia's coffee cup slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor of Cameron's kitchen. Tell them we'll be right down, Cameron said calmly, then hung up the phone. Cameron, I can't see them. Not here. You don't have to see them anywhere you don't want to, Cameron replied, already cleaning up the broken coffee cup. But I think it might be better to handle this in the lobby with witnesses and security around, rather than let them keep showing up unannounced. Nia's hands were shaking as she nodded. Cameron was right. Running away wasn't going to make this go away. In the elevator down to the lobby, Cameron took her hand. Remember, you don't owe them anything. You don't have to agree to anything. And you're not alone. The elevator doors opened to reveal Miguel Martinez, a heavy-set man in his 60s wearing an expensive suit, standing next to Trevor, who looked angry and impatient. Miguel's presence made the confrontation feel more serious, more official. Miss Johnson, Miguel said formally as they approached. Thank you for agreeing to see us. Mr. Martinez, Nia replied, pleased that her voice sounded steady. This is my boyfriend, Cameron Reed. Miguel's eyes sharpened as he looked Cameron up and down, clearly assessing his expensive clothes and confident bearing. Mr. Reed, I've heard about you from my son. All good things, I'm sure, Cameron replied dryly. Miguel's smile was cold. We need to discuss the situation between our families, Miss Johnson. Perhaps we could speak privately. Anything you have to say to Nia, you can say in front of me, Cameron said firmly. Trevor stepped forward aggressively. This is family business, rich boy. It doesn't concern you. Actually, it does concern me, Cameron replied calmly. Since I'm the one who's going to be paying off your father's loan to end this harassment. Both Martinez men looked shocked. You told him about our private family business? Trevor accused Nia. It stopped being private when you cornered me at a public wedding and tried to force an engagement. Nia shot back, finding her courage. Miguel recovered first. Mr. Reed, I appreciate your concern for Miss Johnson. But this is a matter of honor between our families. The debt cannot simply be paid by an outsider. Why not? Cameron asked. Money is money. Because the agreement was specific, Miguel replied. My family loaned money to the Johnson family with the understanding that it would be repaid through the marriage of our children. That was the collateral. That's not legal, Cameron said flatly. You can't use a human being as collateral. Perhaps not in a court of law, Miguel agreed. But in our community, a man's word is his bond. Roberto Johnson gave his word. I didn't give my word, Nia said firmly. I was 18 years old and away at college when this supposed agreement was made. No one asked me what I wanted. Trevor's face was getting red again. What you wanted doesn't matter. You're a daughter, not a son. Your father had the right to make decisions about your future. Cameron stepped closer to Trevor, his voice getting dangerous. Say that again. Cameron, Nia said quietly, touching his arm. It's okay. But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. Miguel seemed to sense the tension escalating. Mr. Reed, Miss Johnson, please. Let's be reasonable adults here. Trevor cares deeply for Nia. They grew up together. Their marriage would unite two respectable families and honor the commitment that was made. I don't care about Trevor, Nia said clearly. I never have. I care about Cameron. You barely know this man, Trevor said desperately. We have history, Nia. We have a connection. We have nothing, Nia replied. You've been harassing me since we were children, and I've been saying no since we were children. That's not a connection, Trevor. That's stalking. Trevor's face went from red to purple. You can't talk to me like that. She can talk to you however she wants, Cameron said coldly. And so can I. This conversation is over. Miguel held up a hand. Mr. Reed, Miss Johnson, I understand you're upset. But there are consequences to breaking faith with our family. Roberto Johnson's business, for instance. It would be a shame if he lost everything because his daughter chose to be selfish. The threat hung in the air like poison. Are you threatening her father? Cameron asked, his voice deceptively calm. I'm simply pointing out the reality of the situation, Miguel replied smoothly. Roberto owes a significant amount of money. If that debt cannot be satisfied through the marriage arrangement, then it will need to be satisfied through other means. Nia felt sick. This man was talking about destroying her father's livelihood to force her into marriage with his son. How much? Cameron asked bluntly. I beg your pardon? How much money would it take to end this? Final number. Miguel and Trevor exchanged glances. $150,000, Miguel said. Plus legal fees and interest accrued during these delays. Cameron didn't even blink. Fine. I'll have my lawyer draw up the paperwork and transfer the funds by tomorrow. Cameron, no, Nia said quietly. That's not what we agreed to. The number keeps growing, Cameron pointed out. Better to end this now. Miguel was shaking his head. Mr. Reed, I appreciate the offer, but as I said, this isn't just about money anymore. It's about honor. About keeping promises. Whose honor? Cameron asked. Because from where I stand, threatening a woman to force her into marriage doesn't look very honorable. My son loves her, Miguel said firmly. He has loved her since they were children. Your son doesn't know what love is, Cameron replied. Love doesn't threaten. Love doesn't force. Love respects the other person's choices. Trevor had been quiet during this exchange, but now he exploded. Don't tell me about love, he shouted. You've known her for a week. I've loved her my whole life. No, Nia said firmly. You've wanted to own me your whole life. That's not the same thing. Nia, please, Trevor said, his voice breaking. Just give me a chance. Give us a chance. We're meant to be together. We're not meant to be anything, Trevor. I'm with Cameron now. I'm happy with Cameron. This isn't over, Trevor said, his voice shaking with rage and hurt. You think you can just run away with your rich boyfriend and everything will be fine? You think there won't be consequences? Cameron stepped between Trevor and Nia. Are you threatening her? I'm telling her the truth. She belongs with me. She always has. And sooner or later, she'll remember that. Miguel put a restraining hand on his son's arm. Trevor, enough. But Trevor shook him off. No, Papa. I'm tired of being polite. I'm tired of pretending this is negotiable. He looked directly at Nia. You will marry me, Nia. One way or another, you will marry me. Cameron's hand was on his phone instantly. I'm calling security. That won't be necessary, Miguel said quickly. We're leaving. But Miss Johnson, I hope you'll reconsider. For your family's sake. After the Martinez men left, Nia collapsed into one of the lobby's leather chairs. I can't do this anymore, she whispered. They're never going to stop. Cameron sat beside her and pulled her into his arms. Yes, they will. I promise you they will. How can you be sure? Cameron's smile was grim. Because I have resources they don't know about. And because I meant what I said before. I'm falling in love with you, Nia Johnson. And I protect what I love. As they rode the elevator back up to the penthouse, Nia realized that the stakes had just gotten much higher. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about her family, about Cameron's safety, and about whether love really could conquer the ugliness that some people call tradition. She just hoped Cameron was right about being able to protect them all. The restraining order was served to Trevor Martinez at 8 a.m. the next morning. My lawyer worked through the night, Cameron explained as they sat in his office later that day. Nia had come with him to Reed Industries headquarters, partly because she wanted to see where he worked, but mostly because she was afraid to be alone after Trevor's threats. Will a restraining order actually stop him? Nia asked, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows of Cameron's executive office. The view of downtown Chicago was spectacular, but she was too nervous to really appreciate it. It's a start. And it creates a legal paper trail if he violates it. Cameron came around his desk and sat in the chair next to hers. But I've also hired a security firm. You'll have a bodyguard when I can't be with you. Cameron, that seems like a lot. Trevor threatened you yesterday. In front of witnesses. I'm not taking any chances. As if summoned by their conversation, Cameron's assistant knocked and entered. Mr. Reed, there's a situation in the lobby. Security says someone is demanding to see Miss Johnson and refusing to leave. Cameron and Nia exchanged glances. Trevor? She asked. Let's find out, Cameron said, picking up his desk phone. This is Cameron Reed. What's happening in the lobby? Nia could hear the tinny voice of the security guard through the phone. Sir, there's a young Hispanic male here claiming to be Miss Johnson's fiancé. He says he has legal papers that prove she has to come with him. He's getting agitated and refuses to leave. Call the police, Cameron said immediately. He's violating a restraining order. Sir, he says he has a court order that overrides any restraining order. Cameron's face went dark. We'll be right down. In the elevator, Cameron called his lawyer. David, it's Cameron. Trevor Martinez is in my building lobby claiming he has a court order. Is that possible? He listened for a moment. What do you mean, what kind of court order? Nia watched Cameron's face grow increasingly grim as he listened to his lawyer. I see. No, don't do anything yet. Let me see what we're dealing with first. He hung up as the elevator reached the lobby. What did he say? Nia asked. He says it's possible that Miguel Martinez went to a judge in Texas and got some kind of order related to the debt situation. But it shouldn't have any authority here in Illinois. When the elevator doors opened, Nia could see Trevor standing near the security desk with two men in suits she didn't recognize. One of them was holding an official-looking folder. There she is, Trevor called out when he saw them. Nia, tell these people you're coming with me. I'm not going anywhere with you, Trevor, Nia replied, staying close to Cameron's side. One of the men in suits stepped forward. Miss Johnson, I'm Deputy Marshal Rodriguez. I have an order from Judge Hernandez in Millbrook County, Texas, requiring you to return to Texas to resolve a civil matter regarding your family's debt obligations. That's not how jurisdiction works, Cameron said firmly. Texas can't compel someone to leave Illinois for a civil matter. Sir, with respect, this order is valid. Miss Johnson needs to come with us. Cameron stepped in front of Nia. She's not going anywhere without her lawyer present. And I want to see some identification and verify that order. Deputy Rodriguez showed his badge and handed over the court documents. Cameron's building security chief, a former Chicago police officer named Frank, examined them carefully. These look legitimate, Frank said quietly to Cameron. But you're right about jurisdiction. Something's not right here. Cameron was already on his phone with his lawyer again. David, I need you down here immediately. Trevor Martinez has what looks like a court order from Texas requiring Nia to return to Texas. While Cameron talked to his lawyer, Trevor approached Nia. Just come with me, he said quietly. Stop making this harder than it has to be. Your father is in real trouble, Nia. The only way to fix this is for you to come home and make things right. By marrying you? By honoring your family's commitment. I never made any commitment to you or your family. Your father did. And in our culture, family commitments matter. Nia felt a flash of anger. Don't lecture me about our culture, Trevor. Using women as payment for debts isn't culture, it's abuse. Trevor's face hardened. You've been living in the city too long, Nia. You've forgotten who you are and where you come from. I know exactly who I am. I'm not your property. Cameron finished his phone call and returned to Nia's side. My lawyer is on his way, he told her quietly. And he says this order is bogus. No Texas judge has the authority to compel someone to leave Illinois for a civil debt matter. Then why do these marshals think it's valid? Nia asked. Because they're not real marshals, Frank said, returning from a phone call of his own. I just called the U.S. Marshal's office. They have no record of any Deputy Rodriguez. The realization hit everyone at the same time. Trevor had hired fake officers to try to kidnap Nia. Call the police, Cameron said sharply to Frank. Real police. The two fake marshals must have overheard because they suddenly headed for the exit. Stop them, Cameron called to his security guards. But the fake officers were already through the doors and running toward a black SUV parked illegally outside the building. Trevor stood frozen in the lobby, looking stunned. You hired fake police officers? Nia asked, her voice shaking with rage and fear. No, I didn't know, Trevor said. My father said he had handled everything legally. So you were going to kidnap me? It wasn't kidnapping. It was bringing you home. Against my will. With fake police officers. That's kidnapping, Trevor. The Real police arrived within minutes, along with Cameron's lawyer. After taking statements from everyone, they arrested Trevor for conspiracy to commit kidnapping and fraud. As Trevor was led away in handcuffs, he looked back at Nia. "This isn't over," he called. "My family won't give up." "Yes, they will," Cameron said firmly. "Because you're going to prison." After the police left with Trevor, Nia sat in Cameron's office, shaking. "I can't believe he actually tried to have me kidnapped," she said. "I can," Cameron replied grimly. "And that's why we're taking additional precautions." "What kind of precautions?" Cameron sat down across from her. "I want you to stay at my penthouse until this is completely resolved. I want bodyguards with you whenever you leave the building. And I want to move your father somewhere safe, in case Miguel tries to retaliate against him." "Cameron, you're talking about completely upending my life." "I'm talking about keeping you alive." The stark words hung between them. "You really think they'd hurt me?" "Nia, they just tried to kidnap you using fake federal officers." "Yes, I think they'd hurt you." Nia thought about Trevor's increasingly desperate behavior, about Miguel's cold threats, about the fake marshals. "Okay," she said finally. "I accept your protection. All of it. All of it." Cameron's relief was visible. "Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for keeping me safe." As Cameron made calls to arrange security and to check on her father, Nia realized that she was no longer just accepting Cameron's help or even his love. She was accepting a complete transformation of her life. Trevor and his family had forced her hand, but in doing so, they had also made her see clearly what she wanted. She wanted Cameron. She wanted safety. She wanted a life where she could make her own choices. And she was finally ready to fight for all of it. Nia's mother called at 6 in the morning, crying so hard that Nia could barely understand her. "Mija, thank God you answered. I've been trying to reach you all night." "Mama? What's wrong?" Nia sat up in bed, immediately alert. "It's your father. He's in the hospital." Nia's blood went cold. "What happened?" "Heart attack. Last night around 10. The doctors say it was brought on by stress." "Is he okay? Is he going to be okay?" "He's stable now, but Mija, he keeps asking for you. He says he needs to tell you something important about the Martinez family." Nia closed her eyes. Even from a hospital bed, her father was worried about the debt situation. "Mama, where are you calling from?" "I'm at Regional Medical Center in Houston. I drove down as soon as I heard." "Houston?" "That was 8 hours from Millbrook, where her father lived." "Why is Daddy in Houston?" "He was there on business. Meeting with some lawyer about the Martinez situation." Nia felt a chill of unease. "What lawyer?" "I don't know, Mija. But he was very upset when he called me yesterday. He said he'd found out something terrible about Miguel Martinez, something he never knew when he made the agreement." Cameron appeared in the doorway of the guest suite, wearing pajama pants and a concerned expression. He must have heard her talking. "Mama, I need to come see Daddy." "No," her mother said quickly. "He made me promise to tell you not to come. He says it's not safe for you in Texas right now." "But Mama?" "Mija, listen to me. Your father said to tell you that the original agreement was a lie. He never agreed to a marriage contract. Miguel Martinez tricked him." Nia's heart started pounding. "What do you mean?" "I don't have all the details, but your father says Miguel showed him fake papers when they made the loan. The real loan documents never mention marriage." Cameron was fully alert now, moving into the room and sitting on the edge of the bed. "Mama, put Daddy on the phone." "He's sedated right now, Mija. But he wanted me to tell you to stay with your young man. He says Cameron sounds like a good person, and he's sorry he ever doubted you." Tears started flowing down Nia's cheeks. "Tell Daddy I love him and I'm going to fix this." "How?" Nia looked at Cameron, who nodded encouragingly. "I'm going to make sure Miguel Martinez can't hurt our family anymore." After hanging up with her mother, Nia filled Cameron in on what she'd learned. "Fake papers," Cameron said thoughtfully. "That would explain why Miguel was so insistent that the debt could only be paid through marriage. If the original loan documents don't mention marriage, then he was planning to commit fraud to get you to marry Trevor. But my father saw papers. Forgeries probably. Miguel shows your father fake documents that mention marriage, gets your father to sign the real loan papers that don't mention marriage, then uses the fake documents to convince everyone that marriage was part of the original deal." Nia felt sick. "So this whole thing has been a scam from the beginning." "It looks that way. The question is, can we prove it?" Cameron was already reaching for his phone. "I'm calling my lawyer. If Miguel has been using forged documents to support his claims, that's federal fraud. The FBI will be very interested." While Cameron made his calls, Nia tried to process everything. Her father had been manipulated and lied to. The marriage contract that had haunted her for years didn't exist. Trevor's claims on her were based on fraud. But proving fraud would require evidence, and Miguel Martinez had had 5 years to cover his tracks. Cameron's lawyer arrived at the penthouse an hour later with 2 FBI agents. "Miss Johnson," Agent Sarah Walsh said, settling into one of Cameron's living room chairs. "We understand you may have information about a fraud scheme involving forced marriage and falsified loan documents." Nia told them everything. The childhood promise Trevor claimed, the wedding confrontation, the escalating threats, and finally the fake marshal's attempt. "We already have Trevor Martinez in custody for the fake federal officers," Agent Walsh's partner, Agent Kevin Park, said. "But if we can prove his father has been committing loan fraud, we can bring much more serious charges." "What kind of evidence would you need?" Cameron asked. "The original loan documents would be helpful. Bank records showing the actual loan amount and terms. And ideally, we'd like to talk to your father, Miss Johnson. He's in the hospital in Houston. Heart attack." Agent Walsh's expression softened. "I'm sorry to hear that. When he's feeling better, we'd like to get a statement from him about exactly what Miguel Martinez showed him when they made the loan agreement." "There's something else," Nia said. "My mother mentioned that my father was meeting with a lawyer in Houston yesterday, before his heart attack. He'd found out something about Miguel that upset him." The agents exchanged glances. "Do you know which lawyer?" Agent Park asked. "No, but my father's in room 314 at Regional Medical Center. Maybe the lawyer left contact information there." Agent Walsh stood up. "We'll send agents to Houston to follow up. In the meantime, Miss Johnson, you should know that we take threats like the ones you've described very seriously. Is there somewhere safe you can stay while we investigate?" Cameron's arm tightened around Nia's shoulders. "She's staying here. I've hired private security as well." "Good. And Mr. Reed, given your resources, you should be aware that people like Miguel Martinez sometimes escalate when they feel cornered. Be careful." After the agents left, Nia called the hospital to check on her father. He was awake and stable, and the nurse let her talk to him briefly. "Mija," her father's voice was weak but determined. "I'm so sorry. I never knew Miguel was lying to me." "It's okay, Daddy. We're going to fix this. The lawyer I met with yesterday, his name is James Chin. He's in Houston. He has copies of the real loan documents. Miguel tried to buy them back, but the lawyer kept copies. Daddy, don't worry about this right now. Focus on getting better." "No, Mija, listen. There's more. Miguel didn't just lie to me. He's done this to other families too. The lawyer has evidence of at least 3 other cases where Miguel used fake marriage contracts to control young women." Nia felt her anger building. Miguel hadn't just targeted her. He was a predator who had been destroying families for years. "Daddy, the FBI is going to want to talk to you." "Good. I'll tell them everything." It's time Miguel Martinez faced justice. After ending the call, Nia turned to Cameron. "He's hurt other families," she said. "Other women like me." Cameron's jaw was tight with anger. "Not anymore. We're going to stop him." "How can you be sure?" "Because now we have evidence. Because the FBI is involved. And because sometimes, when you finally stand up to bullies, they turn out to be not as powerful as they pretended to be." Nia leaned into Cameron's warmth, finally allowing herself to hope that this nightmare might actually end. "What happens now?" "Now we wait for the FBI to build their case. We keep you safe. And we plan our future together." "Our future?" Cameron turned to face her fully. "Nia, I know this isn't the most romantic timing, but I don't want to wait anymore. I love you. I want to build a life with you. Will you stay with me? Not just until this is over, but permanently?" Looking into Cameron's sincere brown eyes, Nia realized that even though she'd known him for less than a week, she felt more cherished and protected with him than she ever had with anyone else. "Yes," she said softly. "I love you too. And yes, I want to build a life with you." As Cameron kissed her, Nia thought about how strange it was that Trevor's attempt to trap her had actually led her to true love and real freedom. Sometimes, she realized, the worst things that happened to you ended up being the things that saved you. The call came at 3 in the morning, 2 weeks after the FBI had opened their investigation into Miguel Martinez. Nia's phone rang shrilly in the darkness of Cameron's bedroom, where she had been sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. The caller ID showed her mother's number. "Mama?" Nia answered groggily. "Mija, you need to know something. Miguel Martinez is dead." Nia sat up straight in bed, instantly awake. "What?" "Heart attack, they're saying. But Mija, there's more. The police found Trevor in Miguel's house. He was trying to burn papers. Cameron was awake now too, listening intently. What kind of papers? I don't know all the details, but your cousin Shayla called me. She heard from her friend who works at the sheriff's department that Trevor was destroying evidence. The FBI agents got there just in time to stop him. Nia felt a mixture of relief and uncertainty. Miguel's death meant the threat against her family was over, but it also meant they might never get full justice for what he'd done. Where's Trevor now? In jail. They're charging him with obstruction of justice and evidence tampering, on top of everything else. After hanging up with her mother, Nia and Cameron sat in the darkness, processing this unexpected development. How do you feel? Cameron asked gently. I don't know. Relieved, I think. But also, empty. Like it ended too suddenly. Cameron's arms circled her shoulders. Justice doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Nia's phone rang again. Agent Walsh. Miss Johnson, I'm sorry to call so early, but I wanted you to hear this from us first. Miguel Martinez died last night. My mother told me. What does this mean for the case? It means we have enough evidence to prosecute Trevor for multiple federal crimes. And more importantly, we found what we needed in Miguel's house before Trevor could destroy it all. What did you find? Proof that Miguel defrauded at least 6 different families over the past 10 years. Fake marriage contracts, forged loan documents, falsified bank records. Your father was just the most recent victim. Nia felt tears stinging her eyes. What about the other families? The other women? We're contacting them now. Miguel can't be prosecuted because he's dead, but the evidence we found should be enough to void all the fraudulent loan agreements. These families will be free of the debts, and the women will be free of any marriage obligations. And Trevor? Trevor is going to prison for a very long time. Conspiracy to kidnap, fraud, evidence tampering, and now we can prove he knew about his father's scheme all along. He's looking at 15 to 20 years. After Agent Walsh hung up, Cameron held Nia while she cried. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief and release. It's really over, she whispered. It's really over. 3 days later, they flew to Houston to see Nia's father. He was recovering well from his heart attack and was scheduled to be released from the hospital the following week. Mija, he said as Nia hugged him carefully in his hospital bed. I'm so proud of you for standing up to them. And I'm so sorry I put you in that situation. Daddy, you didn't know Miguel was lying. I should have known better than to make any agreement about my daughter's future without asking her first. In trying to give you opportunities, I almost took away your choices. Cameron stepped forward and extended his hand to Nia's father. Mr. Johnson, I'm Cameron Reed. Nia's father studied Cameron with the careful eyes of a protective parent. So you're the young man who saved my daughter. Actually, sir, she saved herself. I just provided some backup. That made Nia's father smile. Good answer. Nia doesn't need saving. She needs supporting. That's exactly what I want to do, sir. Support her in whatever she wants to accomplish. And what do you want to accomplish, Mija? Her father asked Nia. Nia looked at Cameron, then back at her father. I want to keep working with children at the hospital. I want to help other women who might be in situations like I was. And I want to build a life with Cameron. A life that includes marriage? Her father asked pointedly. Cameron squeezed Nia's hand. Sir, I've asked Nia to marry me and she said yes. But only if we have your blessing. Nia's father was quiet for a long moment, looking back and forth between them. You love each other? Yes, they said simultaneously. You respect each other? Yes. And Nia, you're choosing this freely? No pressure, no obligations. Completely freely, Daddy. Cameron makes me happy. Nia's father nodded slowly. Then you have my blessing. And my apology for taking so long to give it. Later that evening, as they sat in the hospital cafeteria sharing terrible coffee and surprisingly good pie, Nia's mother arrived from Millbrook. So this is the young man who's been taking care of my daughter, she said, looking Cameron up and down appraisingly. Mama, this is Cameron. I know who he is, Mija. The question is whether he knows what he's getting himself into, marrying a Johnson woman. Cameron stood up politely as Nia's mother sat down. Mrs. Johnson, I'm getting myself into a lifetime of loving your daughter and being grateful that she chose me. Nia's mother smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. Good answer. And you can call me Elena. Thank you, Elena. And you should know that I've set up a fund to help other families who might be dealing with situations like Miguel's fraud. We want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. Elena's eyes filled with tears. You would do that? We would do that, Cameron corrected, looking at Nia. This is going to be our project together. As they sat around the small cafeteria table, planning their future and their foundation, Nia realized that Trevor's attempt to claim her had actually led to something beautiful. Not just her relationship with Cameron, but a purpose she'd never considered before, helping other women escape the kind of trap she'd almost fallen into. "There's something else," she said to her parents. "I want to go back to school. I want to become a social worker, specifically to help women in abusive situations." "That's a wonderful goal, Mija," her father said. "But expensive." Cameron smiled. "I think we can manage the tuition." "Cameron, you don't have to. Nia, we're partners now. Your dreams are my dreams. Your goals are my goals." As her parents exchanged glances over Cameron's head, Nia could see their approval. This man who had started as a stranger at a wedding was becoming part of their family, and he was doing it with grace and genuine care. That night, in their Houston hotel room, Cameron pulled Nia into his arms. "Any regrets?" he asked. "About what?" "About kissing a stranger at your cousin's wedding." Nia smiled and kissed him softly. "Best decision I ever made." 6 months later, Nia stood in the bridal suite at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Dallas, the same hotel where Shayla's wedding had taken place. But this time she was the bride. "You look absolutely radiant, Mija," her mother said, adjusting Nia's veil for the third time. The wedding dress was nothing like the gaudy gown Trevor would have chosen for her. Instead, it was elegant and simple, a fitted bodice in ivory silk with a flowing skirt that made Nia feel like a princess. Cameron had insisted she choose whatever dress made her happiest, and this one made her feel beautiful and confident. "Are you nervous?" Shayla asked, putting the finishing touches on Nia's makeup. "No," Nia said, surprising herself with how calm she felt. "I'm excited." And she was. After months of legal proceedings, FBI investigations, and media attention, this day felt like a celebration of everything good that had come from such a difficult situation. Trevor had been sentenced to 18 years in prison. The evidence found in Miguel's house had been enough to free 6 other families from fraudulent debt agreements and forced marriage situations. And the foundation Cameron and Nia had started was already helping dozens of women escape abusive relationships and financial manipulation. A soft knock at the door interrupted Nia's thoughts. "Come in," Elena called. Cameron's sister Lauren entered with a huge smile and a small velvet box. "These are from Cameron," Lauren said. "He wanted you to have them before the ceremony." Nia opened the box to find a pair of diamond earrings that sparkled like stars. "They're beautiful," she breathed. "They were our grandmother's," Lauren explained. "She always said they should go to the woman who made Cameron truly happy." As Nia put on the earrings, she thought about how much her life had changed since that desperate kiss at Shayla's wedding. She had a career she loved, a purpose that fulfilled her, and a man who respected her dreams and supported her goals. "It's time," Elena said, checking her watch. As they walked toward the ballroom where the ceremony would take place, Nia could hear the string quartet playing softly. Through the partially open doors, she could see the rows of guests. Her family from Texas, Cameron's family from Detroit and Chicago, colleagues from the hospital, and friends they'd made together. But most importantly, she could see Cameron waiting for her at the altar. He looked devastating in his black tuxedo, but it was the expression on his face that took her breath away. He looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world, like he couldn't believe his luck. As the bridal march began and Nia walked down the aisle on her father's arm, she thought about the journey that had brought them here. All the fear, all the struggle, all the uncertainty had led to this moment of pure joy. "Who gives this woman to be married?" the minister asked. "Her mother and I do, with great love and great joy," her father said, kissing her cheek before placing her hand in Cameron's. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They had written their own vows, and when it was Nia's turn to speak, she looked into Cameron's eyes and said the words she'd been planning for weeks. "Cameron, 6 months ago I was running from someone who wanted to control my life. But when I kissed you, I wasn't running anymore. I was running toward something. Toward love, toward respect, toward a partnership where I could be completely myself. You have shown me what it means to be treasured, not owned. To be supported, not controlled. To be loved for who I am, not who someone thinks I should be. I promise to love you, support you, and choose you every day for the rest of our lives." Cameron's own vows were just as moving. "Nia, you are the bravest person I know. You taught me that love isn't about having power over someone, it's about empowering them to be their best self. You make me want to be worthy of your trust, your love, and your partnership. I promise to stand by you, to fight for you when necessary, and to celebrate with you always. I choose you today and forever." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Cameron's kiss was soft and reverent, full of promise and joy. The reception was everything Nia had dreamed of. Instead of the stuffy formal dinner Trevor would have planned, Cameron had arranged for a fun celebration with great music, delicious food, and dancing under twinkling lights. During their first dance, Cameron held her close and whispered in her ear. "Any regrets yet, Mrs. Reed?" "Just one," Nia said, making him look concerned. "What's that?" "I regret that it took Trevor's harassment to bring us together. I wish I'd found you sooner." Cameron's smile was radiant. "We found each other exactly when we were supposed to. And now we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time." As they danced, surrounded by family and friends, Nia caught sight of the news crew Cameron had allowed to film portions of the wedding. Their story had become a symbol of hope for other women in similar situations, and they had decided to share their joy publicly to inspire others. The reporter had interviewed several guests about the couple's foundation work, and Nia had been moved to hear what people said about their efforts to help women escape financial abuse and forced marriages. "It's like they turned their pain into purpose," one guest had said. "They're helping make sure no other young woman has to go through what Nia went through." Later in the evening, as the party was winding down, Nia stepped outside onto the hotel's balcony to get some air. Cameron found her there, looking out over the city lights. "Happy?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Completely," she said, leaning back against his chest. "Cameron, can I tell you something?" "Anything." "The night of Shayla's wedding, when Trevor was pressuring me to marry him, I felt so trapped. Like my whole life was going to be decided by other people. But kissing you, it was the first time I'd ever made a choice that was completely my own." "And how did that feel?" "Terrifying and wonderful at the same time." Cameron turned her in his arms so she was facing him. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you've been making your own choices all along. You chose to become a nurse. You chose to move to Chicago. You chose to build an independent life. Kissing me wasn't your first independent choice, Nia. It was just the one that led you home." As Cameron kissed her under the stars, surrounded by the sounds of their celebration, Nia realized he was right. She had been strong and independent all along. She had just needed to find someone who recognized and celebrated those qualities in her. The fake marshals, the threats, the legal battles, all of it had been worth it to get to this moment. To this man who saw her as an equal partner, who supported her dreams, and who loved her exactly as she was. As they walked back into their wedding reception, hand in hand, Nia smiled at the thought that she'd started this journey trying to avoid one man's claim on her life, only to find someone who would never claim her but would choose her every day. And in a world where too many women were still told they belonged to others, that felt like a victory worth celebrating. Their love story would continue, but the foundation was solid. Mutual respect, genuine partnership, and the understanding that the best kind of love doesn't trap you or control you. It sets you free. What do you think will happen next in Nia and Cameron's marriage? Have you ever had to make a choice between safety and independence? Subscribe and share your thoughts about whether love really can conquer situations like this one, because your stories and opinions help create content that speaks to real experiences.